In this video, I'm going to show you how I wired up my camper so that I have a Powerpole adapter in this panel here, which allows me to power my radio from the camper battery without having to run a wire across the floor, to where it would have been way easier to put a panel adapter next to the breaker box. To get that Powerpole panel mount installed, I'm going to have to remove 3 pieces of the camper. That fireplace is going to go, and then need to get rid of that subwoofer there. Well, not get rid of it, but take it out. And then finally, going to need to open up the breaker box. So for the breaker box, there's 2 screws that need to come out in the corners and the top. Then once you take that out, you can pull the 4 screws out to pull the whole breaker box out. Subwoofer, it's got 4 screws, same thing there. Just take those out, and then I'll show you how to take out the fireplace. To take the fireplace out, all you got to do is carefully slide that glass upward. It'll pop right off. And once you take the glass panel off, there's 4 screws in the fireplace. Take those out, and the fireplace comes right out. Here's the speaker wires from the speaker that was in that hole there. I'm going to snip the ends of those, attach it to the electrical fishing line, and run it back to the radio so I can grab the power cord from there. Now that the electrical fishing line is through, I'm taping the power cord to the speaker wire, and I'm going to fish it back up through and have it come out the speaker hole. So now that I got the speaker wire passed through and the power cord, now I need to get it the rest of the way through and down into that breaker box. But I can take power cord, put the speaker wire back on, and then get it to its final destination. So as I was trying to figure out how I get this power cord all the way back to the breaker box, didn't really give it a thought that the stereo had to get power from somewhere. There's actually a breaker right there. It says stereo. So I took that out of the breaker box and the ground down there, and I'm going to hook up the electrical fishing line and pull this all the way back up there, and I should be able to then get the power cord all the way back to the breaker box. As I had mentioned, the power cord for the stereo, which would have gone all the way to where I wanted it to be, was able to fish through with the electrical fishing line, and now I have the power cord taped to the stereo power cord so that I can pull the fishing line back through to the breaker box. I have success. I made the power cord come all the way from the stereo to the breaker box. Now it's time to wire everything in. Everything's wired in now. That empty spot where there's no breaker, I'm going to put a 20 amp breaker. I've listed it on the panel here where it says Powerpole, and then over here, if we can get my light to shine through, that's where I put the ground side of the power cord. So with the power cord all the way through, I am going to make the Powerpole's final resting place right there. So I'm going to drill a hole right below the radio for that. If you watched my last video, I learned my lesson. So that right there is center. I did measure to make sure that was center, and then I'm going to use a 1-inch Forstner bit to drill the hole for Powerpole connector. Hole was drilled. The Powerpole connector has been test fit. So now I just need to wire that thing up and connect it to power cord, test it out. Here's all the pieces and parts that I'm going to be using to install into the panel. So I have the power coming in from the breaker box, and that's going to plug into the Powerpole breakout adapter. Then I have these two cables, which I punched into the panel mount. Got the cover here. Then this slides and screws into the back to keep it up against the panel. I have this panel mount plate that's going to make it look nice. Then I have these retention clips. The retention clips go into the breakout adapter and these ends so that they don't come out. And I will come back with the installed product. Ran into an issue I was not expecting during installation. So the thickness of the actual panel housing, just not enough with this piece of wood to allow me to use the weather cover and the plate as well. So it's just going to be the housing now. It's going to be open like that. Unfortunately, I don't have the weather cover, but it's not going to be outside, so I'm not too concerned about that. And this was just for aesthetics, basically. So that's what it's going to look like for the final installation. This is what the breakout adapter looks like with everything plugged in. What I'm going to do is just put it down into the hole where the radio goes. And I didn't really explain how I took the radio out. Basically, there were two screws holding it in, and I popped the faceplate off, or the side panel off, with a screwdriver. So I'm going to put that all back together and then shove this down into that hole and reinstall the fireplace. The last thing with this adapter, there's one more free spot here. What I can do in the future is in that hole right there, or even next to it, I can put one of the panel mounts on the outside of the camper and then be able to play radio on the outside. I'm going to do that on this side someday, and then down there I'm going to put a hole on the other side of the camper so that I can use these panel mounts to play radio inside the camper and outside the camper. I put some new ends on the speaker wire that I had cut. I'm going to reattach the speaker and put the speaker back in the hole. To keep the Powerpole connectors from being exposed, I cut off the ring that keeps this connected, but it still fits and it still stays on there. So I'll keep it protected by leaving that on when I'm not using it. And when I am, take it off, and I got myself a place to put it until I'm done, and then pop it back on. And this is what the finished installation looks like. No wires to trip over. Really happy with the way that this project came out.